So we're going to go through another example of accommodating resistance, but this one's unique, right? With the accommodating resistance of bands or chains, it's a slow build, right? So we're accelerating because we're more familiar with that increasing load as we go up. And this one, it's a violent hit. And I like the idea behind full speed device, specifically with the sport of football or even rugby, because the idea goes, as soon as I feel that increasing weight, I have to accelerate through it. And where we want to think about where we want to increase that weight is when we want to get to that most sarcomere overlap, right? Where we're mechanically strongest. We're in the mechanically advantaged position. So we're thinking that quarter or half to the quarter squat position. So as I start to accelerate, I want to have as much friends to the party in terms of sarcomeres to overcome. So I'm going to drive through. It really parlays, other than like this accommodating resistance, to more pushing exercises, so squats and bench, really doesn't do a whole lot in terms of deadlifts because we are concentrically oriented. So there's going to be that eccentric orientation to start that really needs to precede that. Accommodating resistance, you could easily use chains or bands for something like deadlifts that has an eccentric or a concentric orientation. This doesn't really parlay as much of that. But what you'll find is that same thing we were talking about with isometronics, that visceral response. As soon as that weight's hit, you got to react. You got to make a decision. You got to go. And we like to think about speeding through it, driving through that tackle, driving through that acceleration. When you get to that, I'm stuck, push through, drive through. That intent is built now when we have this increasing sudden weight change. Should be relatively light too, right? We don't not want a lot of weight here because it shouldn't be something where we get hit, oh my God. It has to be this smooth, violent transition through. Just like when we're jumping and we get to this kind of sticking point, we got to jump through. We got to push through and we got to punch through. Right? It's thinking about I'm punching something, I want to follow through. So that's the analogy and metaphor we're thinking about. Light on the full speed device. If you want to get a little bit more weight here, great. But again, with accommodating resistance, it's a good opportunity to work light and fast, increasing that rate of force development. We could implement a pause here. Again, what am I going to do in terms of partial work or coming from a static position later? That determines about what I want to do from a pause on this stuff. Right? Do I need to do a whole lot of pause here? I can increase that concentric demand, but I already have a concentric demand with increasing weight as I go through. So a full speed device, just like accommodating resistance, can use a pause. We can use a static position in that bottom of the squat or the bottom of a bench. All good, fully understand that. But again, when am I going to do more partial range and coming from a static position later? Yes or no? Maybe or maybe not need to use a pause here. But you make that game time decision and use your best instincts in terms of trying to get a good response. So full speed device, again, caveat, you can use any kind of bar you want, really, as long as we're focusing on that thorax orientation. One of the things that we talked about in the book was with that wider thorax, maybe an anterior load is going to be better. And what that does is pull down our pump handle, gets that pelvis from an anterior tilt to more neutral, and allows us to control this anterior-posterior translation. That is neither here nor there. You're just thinking about what can I get as much success as possible. But you're also thinking about who cares about weight. They've never done this again. They're probably only going to do it for 2-3 weeks, so it really doesn't matter. It matters if I'm increasing or decreasing the deficit. If I'm increasing or decreasing the deficit, we know that we picked the right things. You choose the best tools to get the job done, not necessarily focusing on the tools. So in this case, I'm going to do a barbell back squat position. I'm going to do 3 reps. I'm going to go down with a slight bit of speed, but I'm going to go drive up with a lot more speed. So I set up. Make sure those weight release hooks aren't swinging a whole lot, so when I'm going down, they hit evenly. And that would be an example of a set. Remember, fast reps, slow sets. That thing's going to swing, it's going to oscillate, it's going to move. Right? We want control. We want that rep to be perfect. We're only as good as the reps we do. So focus on quality. Right now, at this point, we should have really dialed in, locked in athletes that are peaking to decrease that deficit. So we want to make sure everything we're doing is as top quality as we can possibly be with great focus and great intent. If it gets crappy, diminishing returns, critical drop-off. 3 methods. We can go lighter, we can get more rest, or we can stop altogether. You have to make that decision as a coach. If we're not getting what we want, the vector changes, the quality changes. If that intent changes, move on. Do something else.